All right, I think maybe we're on. As you can see here, no, this is a table I built for generating story ideas. Now, here's the thing. It's National Novel Writing Month. And if you're not familiar with National Novel Writing Month, it's something I've been doing for 16 years, 17 years, something like that, where every November, usually on the 1st of November, is where you're intended to start. You start the process of writing a little bit every day from 1st of November to the last of November to try to write a 50,000 word novel, or I'm not sure if it's a novel or novella at that length, but um, the idea is 50,000 words in November to write a book. And I've been doing this for a long while. I've enjoyed the community even off season. So after the November's over, a lot of us still hang out in communities online and interact, and I I get a great deal of interaction and fun with some of the community. I've neglected it a lot in the last 3 years because of other things getting in the way. But I do enjoy participating with the community, and I do enjoy creating stories, and I feel like I want to get back into doing some of this again a little more substantially than I've done in the last few years, where I failed in the last few years partly because of other things getting in the way. But I'm gonna do my best to do it this year. But I thought, like, one of the things I've been doing for my own entertainment this year has been to create some tables for random generation for like role playing games and things like that. And so you'll notice on this, I keep trying to point this way because that's the instinctively. This set over here, this is the first part of it. There's a couple other pieces to it, but you'll notice that each one of them is a section of 8 options, and they're color coded for their level. So green is level 1, and then yellow is subsequent to green, so these are subtables. Red is an entirely different table, so you roll once on green, or if you one of the options is on green to roll twice or pick 2 options, and then following that, you have each of these yellow ones is a subcategory of green. So whatever you rolled on green, you pick the one on yellow that matches it. And then the red table is you roll red table for everybody. It's like green, red and green. After that, all the white tables, there are 3 of them on this page, and there's a bunch more on the next page. Those are all rolled in sequence. So the first one, in a world of blank, that one is followed by something changes the status, followed by the character. So it's built on the premise of the old movie preview commentator. It's like, in a world where something changes, one person must blank 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 going forward. So that's what this table's built roughly on the idea of. And so each one of them has 8 options. This is this whole set of D8 tables. So I have an 8-sided dice, 8-sided die, and you're going to roll this die to go through these sets of tables. And I figured, since it's National Novel Writing Month, for coming up with and writing a story in the month of November, I thought it would be fun to um, roll up my concept from scratch and just randomly generate a story that I'm going to work on this month for National Novel Writing Month. I will try to do regular updates as to how I'm doing in the story. I do know that there's going to be some things in the living situation that are going to interfere with that it's the nature of the situation that I'm in. But I will do my best to keep an update going on what I'm doing with this project. So this is all D8 tables. There is, I will make these disappear. The second table is this table, all D8s. That's part of just how it worked out. That's just sort of part of how it worked out. Admittedly, it started working out that way, and then it was just easier to make all the others conform to that pattern. But it works out reasonably well. And then there's a third table that is not really related to this story so much. It may be if we roll one of these options, but this is something else one of my friends wanted to get together before Halloween in a local park and do some artwork for Let's Draw Monsters. And so I made a monster making, and this one is not D8s. This is one of each of the dice that comes in a set of D&D dice. So a set of D&D dice is 7 dice. 2 of them are D10s. One's a tens place and one's a ones place for doing percentile dice. But you have a D20, a D4, a D12, 2 D10s, a D8, and a D6. And D stands for dice. This is something we can use to generate monsters. And I had immense amounts of fun doing that. And it's fun to just roll up these random things. And I'll admit, I am not skilled in romance. So option 7 up top here for the first genre roll, we're pulling for not a romance, because I am not a romance writer. And so this could be hazardous to me if I end up having to do a romance novel for the month of November. But I've been building tables like this over the last year, pretty much. I built a set of tables for last year. I was doing something called it's sort of like an advent calendar where I randomly generated a person, place, or thing for role-playing games every day for the month of December. And so that was kind of fun. And I built a set of tables that would generate an NPC character, non-player character, NPC, a place, so a prompt for a location, or a magic item. So a person, place, or thing that I could roll up randomly and get something new each day of the month of December last year. I built those tables in November of last year, and I have since then expanded the number of tables I've generated that make all sorts of different things. Traps, quests, adventures, whatever you want. I've built a whole slew of these tables. And it's sort of fun for me. I don't know if it's fun for anybody else, but this is a fun project for me to play with. And so part of that fun project was when my friend said, let's draw monsters. And I literally, in the next hour, maybe 2 hours afterwards, I don't keep track of time when I'm doing this stuff like that, I generated a chart for generating monster concepts. There's more I can add to that chart. There's a couple of visual elements, like tiles that you can lay out to determine the shape and size of the creature. Like maybe not the size, but there are things you can add to it to prompt to creative drawing of those things in its own way. But I figured after the monster table was fun enough to play with, I was thinking November's coming up, for National Novel Writing Month is coming right up, so why don't we make a table for a randomly generated story? And so that's what we have here, and that's what we're going to do now. We're going to randomly generate the story I'm going to write for National Novel Writing Month. I'm not promising it'll be good, because if it's something I just don't have a sense of, it can be garbage. And I will have fun doing it anyway. Let's have fun making either something great or something garbage. It doesn't matter what it is. Just let's have fun doing it. That's the goal. And so You're welcome to roll on this table. It's been up long enough that you should be able to have a sense of how to get started if you've already been doing this. If you want to roll along with me and just roll up a story, like you don't have to hit 50,000 words. You don't have to hit 10,000 words. You can do a short story. You can do a series of short stories. You could do a story a day using this table if you wanted to. I've done something like that before, not using these tables, but I did a story a day for a month once. Oh, God. It was probably about 15, 14, maybe 12 years ago. Somewhere in that range, I did a short story a day. 1,000 to 2,000 words is what I considered a short story. And that was fun. And you can do it with these tables. You can do a novel, a novella, short story, even a, what do we call those? Microfiction. Like, you can do whatever you want with these. I'm going to roll a D8 now for the very first genre roll. And I will do my best not to re-roll. Oop, I rolled an 8. It's a green die and I got a green screen behind me, so it's probably not going to show. But D8 is what I rolled. Oh, it did show relatively well. So we've got a D8. That means I roll twice. Please, please avoid the 7s. We got a 2. I don't know if that's visible. 2. You might notice a tremor in my hand. That's part of my medical stuff going on right now. I don't know why. And we may never know. So we're looking at a fantasy and a... Do we pick or do we roll? Half the fun of this is doing a random... This is fantasy. Oh, it'd be interesting if we double roll a fantasy, but like every roll we make is another chance for that stupid romance. Or like, I'm not super objecting to comedy, but comedy is a hard one to pull off. I will see how that goes. No, we're not doing 7. I'm trying to control the die, but it's still a random roll. Ooh, 6. Okay, 6. What do we got? Fantasy adventure. I will show you the 6 here. Well, the green screen's making it a little hard, but hopefully it's at least moderately visible. So, fantasy adventure. Oh, so over on the adventure table, we have things like superhero, western, spy, pirate, steampunk, or gaslight, coming of age or road trip, action contemporary. So that would be like a Stallone movie or a Schwarzenegger style movie from the 80s. Just the standard action adventure. I would almost state that the Fast and Furious movies that I've seen exactly 0 of would classify, the early ones would probably classify as an action contemporary. So an action adventure. So we're looking at, okay, fantasy. We're rolling a D8 in fantasy to figure out what kind of fantasy it is, and then a D8 in adventure. And it's possible we'll get an 8 in one or both of those, and then we'll roll twice on those tables to see what we're getting. This will be interesting. We got a 2 for fantasy. Ooh, that is, that's probably not one of my strong suits, but wuxia, which is I'm butchering that, I almost guarantee you, and apologies for doing so, but that is, would we call that kung fu style? It's Oriental fantasy? No, that's not the phrase we want to use. Chinese? Is it specifically Chinese based? Well, Whatever it is, that is what we're using for our fantasy style. What are we doing for adventure? 5. Steampunk. Oh my god. That is a hell of a combination. Oh, that is one hell of a combination, man. I kid you not. I didn't show you the rolls, but I'm not I'm not fudging any of my rolls here tonight. That's not the goal, and it's not the fun of the project. If you can modify it to any degree, it takes away some of the fun. So let's look up wuxia. I want to see how it's pronounced. See if I can get it to be. Is there a translator or a pronunciation? Literally means martial heroes is a genre of Chinese fiction concerning the adventures of martial artists in ancient China. That is what we're doing. That is our fantasy genre with steampunk elements to it. Whoo, wow. That is gonna be a tall order. I kind of love the fact that it is just so out there. How do you pronounce it? Is there a pronunciation key? I think I'm kind of close. My Mandarin is not great, so feel free to give me crap about it in the comments. I'll take all the critique and comments about it if you want. Yeah, so pronunciation of the term. Can we get it? Oh, come on. No, skip the ads. Come on, skip the ads. Skip the ad.
This word from Chinese. How do you say it correctly? The pronunciation is as wuxia.
Wuxia.
Wu as in W-H.
Wuxia. Okay. I'm still probably doing it wrong because I do not have the knack for tonal language. Well, for the tonal specific language of Mandarin and some of those other derivative languages from the Mandarin. Or of that family anyway. So we've got, oh man, wuxia, steampunk. Okay, so we've done that. Now we move into the type of story, which is the one up top here on the red. Whoop, my finger disappears. Okay, but over here on this side, the red, that's going to be telling us whether it's utopian, dystopian, tragic, a moral story or led tale, vengeance-based, choose your own adventure style. That would be weird. Or a puzzle of some kind, or, roll 2 of the category. So, 7. A steampunk puzzle in ancient Chinese martial arts style. Holy crap. That is a loaded thing. And I will be fairly honest. The type may be something that gets lost in the writing. Because it is not necessary for the rest of these tables to work. I'm going to try to stick to it. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm going to do some of the brainstorming here tonight, but good Lord, that's a whole another kind of mess. 7. I don't know if I showed you the 7. I don't know if you can see the 7. Man, it's really hard to navigate this on the camera. Okay, so Oh, wuxia steampunk puzzle story. All right, so in a world of, ooh, it really likes the sevens all of a sudden. Mundane life. So that's a relatively ordinary, you know, example of the mundane world. There's nothing extravagantly off or oppressive, or this is not versus an evil empire situation yet. Something changes the status quo. So it is ancient China fantasy with steampunk elements. Now, are the steampunk elements inherent to the setting, or are they part of what's introduced next? So the next question is something changes the status. And 6 would be the technology that comes into the mix. We're not doing the opium wars, are we? I feel like that would be sort of wrong, but we'll find out. 4, culture. So we could still, like, culturally based, you could still have the steampunk culture introduction be the thing that disrupts the mundane life of the wuxia style story. Interesting. So we might be able to get that. I'll show you that just in case it's visible to you on the camera. 4. So we've got, okay, so we've got mundane life with the introduction of a distant or different culture. Martial arts fantasy. I will start saying that because I won't continue to butcher that term as I have with steampunk or gaslight elements to it. Okay, in a world of ancient Chinese martial arts, a culture changes the status quo. 1 noble is our character. So we rolled a 3. A noble. What is this, Buddha showing up? A martial arts Buddha? 3. Okay, so we've got a noble shows up. Okay, so let's drop table 1. Whoop. Wrong drop. There we go. Okay, so we've got a noble. Now we don't need the adventurer class, which, that's based on whether or not you roll a certain number on the previous table. So we can skip that one if we want. And I think since we've got a noble, we don't need to go further into that element. So the next thing on the list is, in a ancient Chinese martial fantasy with steampunk elements, the mundane world is disrupted when a culture of steampunk comes in? Or is it a martial arts fantasy with steampunk elements and a foreign culture comes into the mix? I will brainstorm that later. For right now, our noble must ... 8. Oh, geez. Okay, so we're rolling twice on the must do things. This sounds like a complex quest. This is a saga. 4. Steal or liberate an object or person. And 1. Gather, tournament, or scavenger hunt. Okay, so this is interesting. So a noble competes in a tournament. I'm starting to get a sense of where the story could end up going. A noble competing in a tournament and must steal, liberate an object or person. Interesting. This is not bad. This is workable. It's not my strong suit because there's a lot of things in this category that are not my usual style. Okay, so they must scavenger hunt or compete in a tournament and steal and liberate an object or person in order to 3. Weaken. Oh, who are we weakening with that? It's your opponent of some kind. So that's weaken. I'm spotty on my showing you guys what I'm rolling, but hopefully I'm just trying to keep it honest, make sure everybody knows that we're randomly generating this stuff. So, to weaken the opponent, but can they overcome? So this will be the opponent or an opposing force that they're dealing with. And then the next one is which prevents the goal by the methodology of the opposition. So let's do to weaken. What are we weakening? Ooh, it could be, there's so many good options to go for, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to hope for. So let's just roll it. 1, a monster. Oh, yeah, that was one of the ones I was hoping for. And I feel like we should be able to play a little bit with our monster generating table so that we can, I will show you so that it's not any kind of accusation of going for what I wanted to go for. This is literally just, I rolled a 1. So like we're dealing with a monster. We get to play with my monster creator table so that this will be great. I love this. We'll create a monster for the opponent. And what is the methodology of preventing the goal from being reached? They're trying to weaken the monster. So in order to weaken the monster, they must compete and set free an object or a person. All right, so what is the methodology that the opponent is using to cause their problem? 5. They're capturing or imprisoning people or things, but capturing or imprisoning. So is this one of those situations where the monster is capturing or imprisoning anybody with a certain talent? This is sort of like the what is the biblical story of the guy who's killing all the children because he's afraid that one of them is going to be the end of his reign as king? Something similar to that. You have a monster that's doing the capturing and imprisoning of certain people in order to prevent their being weakened. And so what you're looking at, that actually works. That's capture and imprison. But what we must do is steal or liberate an object or person and compete in a scavenger hunt, tournament, or gathering of resources or tools or whatever. Okay, so this maybe isn't competing in a tournament. This could be a scavenger hunt to get the things you need to free the captured people captured by the monster that are using the captured people in a way to change the status quo of the world. Oh, but this change in the status quo is a cultural one. I'm a little rough on my Chinese mythology. I will have to do some looking up of Chinese monsters. But my instinct is I reflexively go back to the more known in the Western world of Japanese monsters. So instantly I was thinking of are Oni. I believe Oni are um, troll-like demons of Japan. So it's not perfect, but okay. So this is a puzzle. So this is, oh my God, this is like, what is it, Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code or National Treasure with Nicolas Cage, but it's ancient Chinese martial artists with steampunk technology against a monster that is changing the status quo through cultural change. Oh man, this is interesting. Okay, so we've got this last category that I have here, and then we've got an oracle, which is a yes or no. That's an improv technique for um, answering questions that you get stumped by as you play through. So catastrophe is we can roll one or more of these, and I will roll one to start with, because in any general storytelling you get the call to adventure, and then you get the setting out on the journey, the learning as you go, the trials and whatnot, and then the setback, the what is it, the dark soul of the dark night of the soul or whatever it is, where like you think you're going to be victorious and something sets you back so bad that you fear you're never going to succeed at a certain point, and you have to work through that struggle to come back out and win anyway. And so that's sort of where you get your catastrophe, your turning point, your dark night of the soul, or whatever you want to call it. That's one of those things. There are other formats of writing out a story where you do it like a 7-point story, where there's the hook, pinch point, or no, hook, plot point, pinch, and the pinch is something going wrong or some struggle being introduced. Then midpoint, another pinch, and then another plot point, and then resolution. So there are different formats of writing out a story. There are different models to work by. There's the 3-act, the 5-act, the hero's journey, the 7-point plot structure. I think somebody has like an 11 or something like that. There's the equivalent of there's a book called Save the Cat that has its own story beat patterns that they set up. But each one of those would have a different number of what we would consider catastrophes or problems for the character to resolve. So we could do 2 of them, but these are sort of the twists. These are the pinch points or the struggles. So none of these options really quantify as a call to adventure moment. None of this is. These are not the things that are bringing the character into the story. The character comes into the story as a noble in a mundane style world with mundane was probably the wrong way to phrase that when I put that in the chart, but it's a standard world. There's nothing major conflict within the world. It's not a dystopian world where you're struggling against an evil empire or anything. It is a standard life, albeit a Chinese mythological martial arts world in which there are steampunk elements. But that is what's going on. There's no major struggle introduced before that point. The struggle is the cultural struggle that comes into play. Now, this catastrophe is the twist that we get. So let's roll that. I'm rambling at this point, but I'm I'm kind of really into this idea. 4. The villain is not wrong. This is something I included because it's like in the Black Panther movie, the original one. Killmonger's not wrong. He's evil, and what he does is wrong. But his points are not wrong. So I will show you that. That's 4. So he's not wrong. He can be evil, but he's not wrong. Now we have here the oracle, which we would use during the course of the story. If at any point we decide in the writing of the story that we want more catastrophes, I will roll more at the time. But what we've got right now is this extra table past the oracle is optional, but I think it's worth playing with. I may disregard whatever we roll on this, but this is a set of tables where 1 through 7 are options of personality types. These are based off of the chakras, by the way. Well, half based off the chakras. They're based off of a combination of looking at the chakras and comparing them to management styles and personality type quizzes that you can find out there, collating them into a series that works roughly for delineating character type. And now what it says above that is you should be rolling for either who they end up as or who they started as. Because in a character-driven story, you want the character to start with a character type and go through the journey and come out the other side of the journey changed by their journey. So the question is, each of these nope. each of these, God, good Lord, this is hard. Each of these ideas over here is, to the best of my ability when establishing them, neither good nor bad. They are personality traits. So you can start with a vigilance safety based, and you can have the character have some degree of negative aspects of those things. And if you roll for what they're going to turn into as they go through their adventure, they could be something else. Or you could re-roll vigilance safety, and then the goal would be for them to turn into the better options. Now, I've sort of intellectually in my own head based these off of they're based off of the chakras, they're based off of personality type quizzes, but they're also based off of the Greek philosophy of the golden mean. So, like, each one of these things is kind of listed as the thing that runs down the middle. You can overdo them and you can underdo them. And each of those is going off target. So this will be our main character's trait for either how they start, end, maybe both. I don't imagine we'll get anything that makes any sense if we roll 2 of them. So if we roll 1 and get the starting and roll again to get how he ends up, I will do that. But be aware that I am perfectly within my right to disregard all of this that we're going to be doing right now. So, like, this character is, I've not experimented with this aspect yet, so I don't know if it even works within the context of the rest of this. So we rolled a 2. So he's an emotional, desire-based character. So he's a very passionately, maybe to the degree of a petulant, entitled child kind of character. Okay, we can work with that. If that's how they start. The option for going forward with that character further and having them become an emotional, desire-based character in a good way. So like we've taken the petulant childlike, but emotional maturity and healthy desires instead of, you know, the petulant child that we rolled the first time. So we rolled a 2. We rolled a 6. Creative, imaginative. Could we go from an emotional, desire-based character to a creative, imaginative character? I don't know. That's a tricky one. But that brings us to the... I was going to say that brings us to the end, but no, it does not. We have a monster to figure out, don't we? Oh, doozy. Okay, so I've got the D8 out. We can roll the D8. An 8. Oh God, please don't be a seductive cryptid. Okay, we may disregard this as well, because if we're going to be basing this off of Chinese mythology, we may favor the Chinese mythological monsters as it stands. But 5, sci-fi monster, which we can kind of play with being part of the steampunk element. Not quite, but we could kind of make that work, I think. Oh, that's not even a real number. No, we're not doing an 8 again. It didn't roll right. And I'm not cheating. It rolled and it stayed on an edge because it's sitting on an unlevel platform. So it rolled on its edge and I jiggled it and it fell to an 8. Should I roll it twice? That'll get pretty cluttered pretty quickly. So let's start with a sci-fi based monster. And a 7. Gore or body horror based? Okay, so we'll play with that. That's the D8. Let's do the D20 next. If I can get it to get out of this container that it's stuck in. Oh, come on. The D20 is round, which is frustrating when it's inside a locked container. You have to pick it out with your fingers. It's like trying to pick a golf ball out of it. Anyway, so we got the D20. Set that in the corner so it doesn't roll when I try to show you. We rolled a 19. So we've got 19 on the D20. Hooves. Weird. Like my first instinct is the Kieran? But again, I don't remember if that's considered part of Chinese mythology. I think it is to a degree. So we've got, next is my favorite of the dice, the D4. Now remember, this is a sci-fi thing, so it's either undead. It's not meant to be mechanical. It's meant to be constructed, is what I eventually changed that to. So I took that screenshot before I made that amendment. So that's a constructed, so it could be constructed from biological tissues. But there's undead, there's constructed, it could be made out of clay, it could be made out of machine parts. I mean, it's steampunk, so it could be a steampunk difference engine monster. Sci-fi, that's probably reasonably well to go with, honestly. That's not a bad idea. Okay, D4. I rolled a 2, and I will show you that. It's a little harder to do with the D4s. D2, a 2. So it is constructed. So that works reasonably well with our sci-fi concept. What else did we roll on that? We rolled a sci-fi and body horror. So like a cyborg. Okay, that's fair. We're getting somewhere with this. This is not bad. I'm here for it. This is working out pretty darn well, I think. Okay, D12. My monster is scaly. This is upside down, but it's an upside down too. Scaly, mechanical. We've got the D10s. So I will do the 10s place and then the 1s. 80. Oh, are you kidding me? Okay, it's a D8, so it's a D10, so it's not a roll again. Humanoid. Scaly, humanoid, mechanical. Okay. Are we talking a half dragon? Okay, D10. They're not landing on the flat surface, so I'm trying again. 2. Because I got an edge on that last one again. This is not the best rolling box for it, but a 2. So the second one is masks or makeup. Okay. Wow. This is a weird one for sure. So next we're going to use elemental powers of the creature. So are we doing like a half dragon cyborg? Or maybe not even like cyborg, but like clockwork. This is gonna be wild. Okay, elemental powers. We've got a 2. We're rolling a lot of 2s. Air power. So we've got an air power. Man, I tell you what, this has been a ride. Holy cow. That blows my mind. That is truly interesting. So just to recap, we've got I'm going to say it wrong again, so I'm going to say Chinese martial arts fantasy with steampunk elements in which we have a puzzle story. It takes place in a ordinary world for a Chinese martial arts fantasy at any rate. And there's a cultural change that occurs, and one noble must gather or scavenger hunt in order to steal or liberate or gather or scavenger hunt things to help liberate. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, no. So to weaken the scaly, mechanical humanoid sci-fi hooved monster. Oh, I forgot about the hooves. Okay. And the monster is capturing and imprisoning as a means to prevent the goal. Okay, so we're not stealing objects, and we're not scavenger hunting objects. The monster is preventing the goal of weakening the monster by capturing or imprisoning. Okay. Okay. So I'm imagining a world in which a Chinese noble's family. This is turning into Frank Herbert's Dune. You've got the noble son of a loved duke whose call to adventure is trying to help his people against monsters. Now, it is a monster, technically, but the monster's forces are what they're playing against. But the monster isn't wrong. So perhaps the monster is trying to get rid of the nobility for it. Oh, wow. This has gotten juicy. Oh, this is tricky. And this has to be a puzzle. So it's I feel like it's not collecting objects. It's gathering a group. Sort of shades of Baron Munchausen. Like the movie, I think, in particular. I don't know enough about the actual stories that were told around the time that they came out, but the movie of Baron Munchausen has the main character with several characters who are sort of from his tales. Like there's a giant that can lift massive things. There's a guy he's so fast he wears lead boots to keep himself from going too fast. There's a guy with perfect eyesight so that he's a sniper of unusual skill. So like gathering a team that have the chance to weaken the monster character. And it's a monster who's not wrong, but he's capturing and imprisoning as a means to so he's capturing these potential people that the main character will gather as part of his gathering. Now he's gathering and liberating objects so liberating objects or people as well. So some of that may be like he tries to gather them, the monster captures or imprisons them, and so he gets a few of them, or maybe even gets most of them, and the monster captures them and imprisons them. And so that's an additional step to the quest. That's one of the turnaround points where like you think you're doing okay, and then you hit that wall of failure, and you have to restart a lot of what you're doing because you were coming at it wrong. You weren't ready or prepared to be able to do what you needed to do. Now the catastrophe that we had was the realization that the monster isn't wrong in what he's doing. What the The actual things he does are wrong, but the reasoning behind what he's doing maybe isn't wrong. And you start as an emotionally immature individual. I don't think it makes sense to have him end up as a creative, imaginative person. But I do think you can have him be an emotional person who's also creative and imaginative, and having him emotionally mature. I don't know that we need to change the creativity or imagination, but you could have him be overly reliant on it early on. Interesting. I'll think about that a little bit more. And so what we have is hooves, mechanical, scaly, humanoid. What else did we decide was, oh, masks. He's wearing mask. It's sci-fi and air power. Goodness gracious, this is definitely a ride. Well, I think that's the premise we have for tonight. I think if I do this too much longer, this is going to be a massive video to upload. I will come back tomorrow with more updates on my thoughts and ideas of where I'm going with this, and probably start writing in the next couple bits. But for now, let's hit the stop.